since I'm having to manage time, I might actually have to be calling a meeting.
Dr. Okechukwu Enelama is the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. He discloses that the follow-up on the China trip embarked on by the president would be very intense, and that the president had given his cabinet the mandate to deliver. He says the president's trip to China was with more than 200 Nigerian business deals. Mr. Okechukwu insists that Nigeria has a lot to learn from China if it must develop with speed.
The reason why China has generated a lot of interest is because China and Nigeria, have had a long relationship that is now coming together, and frankly is beginning to reach a crescendo, or what you might say, peak performance with adequate tending by both sides. And I'm very happy that this trip tried to cement a lot of these things. And I'll just cover some of the points very briefly. China and Nigeria established diplomatic relations in 1971 and a strategic partnership in 2005. Now, what this means is that, over the years, the two countries have tried to work together, and a lot of these things now need to be pulled together in a way that it will meaningfully impact our lives at the government-to-government level and at the business-to-business level. And that's really what this trip was about. It should also be pointed out that both countries bring a lot of economic importance, not just to the world, but also to their respective continents. China, in particular, is Nigeria's largest trading partner, as you know. Over 40% of our imports come from China, and it represents over $15 billion. And of course, you know that the trip the president made was a state visit. Now, why this is important is I meant that the president was able to go with a number of governors, as you know, a number of ministers, and several business people. Over 200 Nigerian businesses actually came on this trip. And the result was for those of you that were in China, you know what I'm talking about. The energy level was high, the engagement was high, and frankly, what we have to do now is systematic, deliberate follow-up, and the results will inevitably come. And of course, while we were there, the president met with all the key citizens, starting from the president to the premier to some of the other key people in China. And of course, as has been widely reported, we signed several agreements. Now, some of these agreements range from agreements on industrialization to some of the other agreements that you've heard about. What I want to say is that the Nigerian government also acknowledges that there is much Nigeria can learn from China. Just to cite one example, we view with admiration the feat China has accomplished by lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty over the course of just one generation. It has been said that it takes only one committed generation, to rebuild a country or for a country to develop. And why can't it be this generation? China has done it, we can do it. And therefore, there's plenty we can learn from them. So the message the president and his delegation, our delegation, took to China was that we're open for business, we want to collaborate with you, and come and partner with us. But in doing so, we also want to address the trade deficits, which means that we want long-term investments, which again ties into why we have to try and strike long-term deals with them, which China is, by the way, open to.
In his own speech, the Foreign Affairs Minister, Geoffrey Onyama, says President Buhari has put Nigeria's corruption on international agenda, which in turn would change the mindset of nations about Nigeria. According to him, the first foreign policy thrust is in that direction. He dismisses the mixed reactions trailing the president's foreign trips, stating that they are carefully chosen to align with the priorities of the administration.
But if we are going to industrialize as a country, we really have to put in place a sustainable development mechanism. We have to build solid blocks and lay the foundations for us to be able to take off. And that takes time. That's difficult because it means that you might not be putting resources where people expect you to do that. So what this government is doing is that, look, we can't keep going in this cycle, boom and bust, depending on one commodity, a commodity that we don't control, that completely depends on the vagaries of the marketplace. But very importantly, we need foreign direct investment. And in fact, what propelled the growth in China was really the unbelievable amount of investment that was made into China by the Western countries. And so we need to attract foreign direct investments. And all these things are linked, because for your investors to come, Nigeria has to provide an enabling environment, a good environment for business people, and a business-friendly environment. So we have to tackle that. We have to persuade these leaders, these business community, that they can come here and do business. So a lot of his trips have also been designed to achieve that.
Dr. Ibe Kachiku, the Minister of the State for Petroleum Resources, is next. He is one of the most critical ministers closely watched by Nigerians, even as the people groan under the worst fuel crisis in the country, which has crippled businesses and home activities. Kachiku says the Buhari-led government has so far reduced the excesses within the oil and gas sector and close to ending the era of subsidy payments, while making sure the refineries would commence production shortly. On the persisting long queues at fueling stations, Mr. Kachiku puts the blames on fuel diversion to neighboring countries by dealers who seem not satisfied with government's clampdown on their selfish activities.
At the time that we joined last year, the government was owing marketers over 600 billion in unpaid subsidy arrears. The effect of that was a lot of them went out of business, didn't have the liquidity, and stopped importation. Now, the traditional model that has always worked for this country is that NNPC will bring you about 50% of the supply, and the balance 50% are then provided by the rest of the marketers. So when you therefore have a zero supply from the rest of the marketers, you have a 50% deficiency. And NNPC had to struggle fairly quickly to try and fill that gap. A capacity that we did not have, funding that we did not have. The second was that even after we struggled and did that payment in November, there wasn't sufficient FX lines to open up letters of credit, because of the fact that our FX receipts, foreign exchange receipts, were beginning to dwindle. So we didn't have it as easily available as it was. And why is that? At a time when you have $100 a barrel crude, you can afford to save a lot. You can afford to throw money to solutions. When you have a $30 crude, there is no money to throw to solutions. You can only create ideas. And what we are doing is creating ideas on a daily basis to find solutions to the problems that we have. So that was the immediate problem. So immediately we rushed up our ability to try and cover the gaps. And so you found that from November right through till about February, we sort of succeeded. But I think by March, we snapped because we had been extended so much as an NNPC to a capacity that we could not deliver. And yet we had not seen the marketers come back in terms of supply. So the reason why this continues to happen, and if you look at the price modulation, you find that we did something on kerosene during the first price modulation. Today, kerosene is not a problem. People are bringing in kerosene. People are buying their kerosene. For AGO, the same problem. But for PMS, we've continued to hold on to the umbrella of us being the sole determinant of the policies on PMS supply. And that is where ideas, not money, needs to come. And we're working very hard to try and create those ideas that enables everybody to feel comfortable to bring in products. Now, the sad thing, however, is that even for the short-term measures that we put, over 30% of what it is that we supply in this country is diverted. Trucks are moved, trucks are supplied. Lagos, for example, in the last 5 days, we have pumped 400 trucks of product into Lagos State. 400 trucks. The total consumption of Lagos State at the maximum time is 250 trucks. Most of those trucks are diverted from Lagos. They move from here, they go to the outer hinterlands, they cross the borders, they go to Chad, they go to Cameroon. And we need literally a whole army to stop this from happening. So what I continue to do is to continue to supply and oversupply just to cover the gap, and so we struggle. Now, where do you come in? You've got to begin to report incidences that you know. You've got to work. We started publishing the deliveries that we put into Lagos, so that to the rest of the country. So when we say we've pumped in 400, we tell you the filling stations they were located to. So if you don't find products in those filling stations, there are hotlines for you to call, there are police for you to report. Because there's a few people who are basically spending time making a lot of money out of the agony in a time when we are working so hard to fill the gap. So the problem isn't us. We are working, I think that probably as much as any other minister, I have lost countless months of sleep. Because unfortunately, my sector is the sector that touches all of you on a day-to-day, instant-by-instant basis. That's the reality. And so everything that touches you touches me.
From all said, perhaps Nigeria may just be starting all over to piece up its economy after 56 years of independence. Would the federal government's town hall meetings douse the current tension and produce results? Only time will tell.